It's time to watch out for trees in map 3 through 5. Onesimus journeys the Forests of Colosse. For being the second level, albeit 3 in 1, it has a decent amount of things introduced. You get a knife dealing with the tricky frogs, and there's even a basic hostile night switch puzzle. It's a bit straight-lined for my liking, but I'd say it more than makes up for it in escalation. Technically, both maps have enemy fish, but you can't enter the water, so they just make for nice decor. For introducing combat, night switch puzzles, and vine blades, it makes for a fairly effective follow-up map. It's time to taste freedom in map 1 through 2, Onesimus flees Philemon's estate. This map is relatively simple, no enemies opposing you, and just some obstacles to navigate to break out. It does have some meat to it though, notably a couple of secret areas if you look around. I'd say it's at least a better starter map than the one for Jill Saves the Prince, since it's not over in a snap. Visually, it also fits with what it's trying to portray and is a decent intro to the platforming. Overall, I'd say my opinion of it is pretty positive. It's good to start on if you haven't played Jill of the Jungle. It's time to bemoan irritating sand, and Onesimus enters the desert. Gee, this sure is a finely tuned and, dare I say, oddly familiar map. That's because it's straight up a copy-paste of Jill Bounds Through the Boulders. Are they already running out of ideas? About the one upside is an additional score item and bridge in the secret to actually make it beneficial. It removes the tie to Jill Explores the Forest, which I actually think is a detriment because I liked that tie. Adding minor changes does very little to sway the fact that this map is a complete copy, and even the original wasn't that amazing. It's time to flatten out. In map 7, Onesimus wanders into the plains. Well, this is another mostly carbon copy of an existing Jill map, but this is so much worse. Instead of being content to be a ripoff, it strips out the Firebird sequence entirely. Guess that explains why the tie-in was stripped from that past map, since it just skips it. I actually loved Jill Explores the Forest, but this is a cheap knockoff that's just worse. I could see using the engine, but if it's going to keep using clone levels or worse, it defeats the purpose. If you're wondering why this seems to be so short on maps, it's because I frankly got sick of repeat maps. Since I've already done my own ranking shorts of the original Jill of the Jungle maps, I'm just going to provide a list here of all the maps. You're free to check out my rankings of the Jill of the Jungle maps, the playlist of which I provided in a card up top if you want to see how I feel about these maps. About the only difference you'll find here is that in this version of the game, any power-ups were completely removed. Frankly, it's kind of odd to me since the power-ups still exist in the game and there's even a few changes in the sprites for them. My only guess is they were planned at some point, but they just ran out of time. Anyway, hope you enjoyed my rankings. It's only a shame they gave up after the first two because they were honestly fairly good. It's time to overview this sordid tale. Yeah, I decided to skip the rest of the maps. It's more clones until ending on essentially Jill roams the village. Kinda funny that it ends with one of my most despised maps with a bit of a lift tacked on. I really wanted to like this. It had potential as a Chex Quest kind of thing, but they stopped trying fast. After the first two, it's just inferior versions of Jill maps, and I would think the source material deserves better than that, both Jill of the Jungle and the Bible. Even if you're a believer in the Bible and want to support a game themed after it, you're better off looking elsewhere. Super 3D Noah's Ark is probably much better, definitely touching on that soon.